Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hours show. I am very excited to have a returning guest, Dr. Nuccitelli, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about the world of the internet, but a slightly different turn of events and talk about more about addiction. And as you might remember, we had Dr. Nuccitelli on a few months ago talking about iPredator, cyber psychology, cyberbullying, all that great information. And I know a lot of people tuned into that episode. So very excited to have you back on again today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I won't call you doctor as we just discussed. And I am honored to be on the Weekend Wellness Hour show with Dr. Amy Novotny. You're doing a wonderful job.
I appreciate that and really, really appreciate. So I just want to recap a little bit on your background. So you're a psychologist in the state of New York, and you kind of took this on, gosh, a while ago, over a decade ago, back in 2009, you coined the term iPredator to kind of look at how people are kind of stalked and attacked online. And so from there, I imagine you also started beginning to study internet addiction. And is that kind of when it came about?
Well, internet addiction, again, so when we talk about iPredator, we don't have to go through iPredator since we discussed that last time, but it is a dark side of cyberspace concept. What we do know, whether it be offline crime, deviance, perversion, is that often, not always, addiction seems to walk hand in hand with aberrant behavior. And, so that is when I realized, back when I was a forensic psychologist, not all, but alcohol and drug addiction back then seemed to be an aspect as part of whatever the forensic evaluation was. So we have chemical addictions, but then also we have behavioral addictions, such as sexual addiction, gambling, so forth and so on. After the advent and the explosion of the internet and information technology, that is when I realized, walking hand in hand, is those that are online child predators, cyber stalkers, internet trolls, not all, but I started to think, well, if criminals and those that engage in deviant offline behaviors, what does it mean about online behaviors? So we have those that are truly addicted, but that's when I began to study internet addiction. And here we are in 2022. And I think what we're seeing is the birth, if not it's already been born, the genesis of and the evolution of true internet use disorder.
Yeah. And I know you have the most well done website of information for people. I have never seen something done so well. And you go through and you define some of the terms, but I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about some terms that you have on your website. And I know you talk about we're in this information age, kind of an explosion of, we have access to all this content and information over the past 20 years plus the last quarter of the last century. But can you go into kind of information and communications technology and kind of go through how you see this has, kind of come to fruition, this idea of people becoming addicted to the internet?
Okay. Well, when we talk about information communication technology, that is a big fancy term. ICT is the acronym. And what what falls under information communication technology is all types of electronic, all types of technology. Obviously, most important for us, those of us that are dealing in social media, those from the behavioral healthcare realm, is the communications technology part, particularly when it comes to cyber psychology. Now, what is cyber psychology? Very easy. As you know, cyber psychology is the study of human behavior as it relates to the internet, information technology, and social media. Well, even psychology, what do we know about psychology and repetitive abusive behaviors, to a chemical, to alcohol, to other types of behavior, is addiction. So cyber psychology takes into consideration what we are now seeing as internet addiction. Now, and I took my good notes, Doctor. Oh, I'm sorry to call you Dr. Amy. Okay. So what we have is, and you probably know this, but for your listeners, What we have is the two Bibles for psychologists, for psychiatrists, many medical doctors are the DSM, it's called the DSM-5 TR, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Illness. And then we have the ICD-11, which is the International Classification of Diseases. Now, the ICD-11 now has included gaming disorder. Now, we're not talking about offline, playing too much football or baseball offline, but the ICD-11 now has gaming disorder. The DSM-5, which most of us here in the United States use, it's not an actual diagnosis or disorder per se, but it is noted way back in 2013 as an illness, a condition, a psychological dysfunction that requires more study. So both the DSM-5 and ICD-11, both are now starting to accept internet addiction as something that is causing problems within our society.
Okay. And so obviously there's the addictive aspect of it. So how does someone even know that they might have it? Or is it you don't really know when someone points it out to you?
Well, excellent point, Amy. Boy, that was a good one. That in and of I'm sorry, when you ask these questions, I go into outer space trying to answer these in a great sound bite, not wanting to talk too much. So when we talk about internet addiction, the easiest way, as I say all the time, but I've also written down as per the ICD-11 addiction, but the quickest way to know if you or a loved one is internet addiction. Now, again, not to go into a long diatribe of all my talk, I put internet addiction into internet abuse and internet dependent, just like there is alcohol abuse disorder and alcohol dependence, and the difference between abuse and dependence is the severity and the chronicity of the problems. But the quickest and most easiest and most simplified way to assess whether you're an internet addict or an internet abuser is consequences. Do you suffer negative consequences from your online usage?
Got it.
Now, those of us that are living in the internet age, which is all of us, many of us, from the point we get up to the time we go to bed, we spend a significant part of our life online. I'll use me for, I get up in the morning. I start my day by, looking and reading the news. And I usually do that online as I sit here and I drink my coffee. Then I go to work. I work with my patients. I got to give a shout out to my practice, MN Psychological Services. We're doing a great job. We work with the chronically mentally ill, and on a daily basis, not that they see it, but all my therapy notes are done on an electronic medical record. It's done online. Many of the patients that I work with, whether they're schizophrenic, schizoaffective, depressed, suffering from some form of dementia, I use the internet as a form of psychoeducation, whether I'm showing them videos on anxiety management, whether I'm, printing out something on an upcoming operation that they're going to have. So I take a significant part of my therapy time and I use the internet. Then I come home. What am I doing with you, doctor? Sorry. Is I'm using the internet to do prevention education. All right. What I'll do afterwards is that I will probably go online, go through social media, and then every other day, I post my corny novice graphic design educational images that I've been doing for years. So then I will go down to the fitness center and I get offline, so I'm not spending time online. Then the other thing I do, I like to spend a significant time bike riding here in the wonderful Brooklyn area. But the thing is, I am a grown man. I am a professional. I am supposedly the author of a theory called iPredator. I put together a concept called internet addiction, not that I came up with that. And here I'm using the internet pretty much from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. And Ms. Amy, what I have to do, I have to consciously tell myself to turn it off and then go outside, whether to go bike riding, to exercise, or to go down to the fitness center, or to spend a little time with my wonderful cat, Brooklyn. All right. So, but I have to be cognizant of that so that I don't spend all my time online.
Yeah. And it's easy, especially when so much of our social interactions are online. So much of our work is done online.
Yes.
It's easy to just fall into that trap. And especially if you have social media, and that's how you keep up to date with people, because we don't always talk on the phone anymore.
Exactly.
It's really hard.
And many people, I don't want to say I don't want to date myself, but I am last year baby boomer, first year X-Gen. Okay.
Yeah.
This was what year I was born. So where I look at it is that I can, for me, I only use my cell phone, my mobile device for emergencies. Now I would be seen as old school, archaic. Dr. Mike, you're living in the ancient age. But as you go down and you're looking at Z generation, those that are in their teens and their 20s, to them, their device, their iPhone, their Android, their Samsung, they are so reliant upon it that it is everything. Okay. So depending on your age, depending on what you do for a living, depending on what you do for your social time, will dictate how you view internet information technology.
Yeah, and I can see that because I can see, a lot of people go right to their phone, Facebook or whatever, to get that high. Like, okay, I posted something. How many likes did I get? I've done that before.
Exactly. Well, again, and that's, I hate to say, all right, we'll talk.
I'm there.
No, because I put it on an educational image not too long ago, is that quality of followers is more important than quantity of followers.
Right.
Matter of fact, that's an online safety tip, real quick, is that regularly in my social media accounts, I go to my follow, and I'm constantly getting rid of folks, whether I know them, well, most I know or know of them. I will delete them respectfully to those who I've deleted that I haven't seen post anything. Okay. Now, whether or not they like my content is not of interest to me, but if they're not active in whether it be Facebook, whether it's Instagram, I delete them from my following, only because online safety, the quality of your online cat is by far more important than quantity. So that's something great that you brought up. So it's important to regularly go through, your contacts and, take out those that are not actively involved in whatever you're doing online.
And it makes sense because on some of these social media sites, people will try to add you as a friend, and you look at their friend list and like, oh, I know we have 20 friends in common. And so you accept them. But I've done further investigation where I'll send a message and just say, hey, how do you know all these 20 people? And I'll find out that person will say, oh, I don't really know them. I just started adding one person and then I got, to next person. And like all those 20 friends of mine have now had this random person, and it adds to their likes and all that. But this person just kind of infiltrated in.
Exactly. And not to toot my own horn, Amy, but my Facebook profile I've had since, I don't know if it was 2011. So it's been over a decade. And even right now, my personal profile, I only have 180 friends, followers, so forth and so on. Why? Because I regularly go through and I call out those that are not actively involved. Not only, as I said, not so much recognizing my stuff. They don't have to like my stuff, but not seeing them, posting anything. But getting back to internet addiction, what we're talking about today, it's understanding, and I don't know if we're going to be going through the different types or the factors, but it's understanding. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is when we look at just regular addiction, whether it be alcohol addiction, whether it be gambling, whether it be whatever the addiction is, the compulsive dependency, what do we know that walks hand in hand with addiction is deception. Here we are in the information age, and we talk about internet addiction, also called internet use disorder or internet use gaming disorder. If you do recognize them as an addictions, you do have to accept that deception goes with that. Now, what is iPredator? iPredator is 8 types of online assailants. The 3 criteria to be an eye predator is the self-awareness of causing harm using information technology, the use of information of technology, and then 3, most important, is the use of cyber stealth, aka online deception. So the question is, of those 8 types of online aggressors, whether it be child predators, whether it be cyber stalkers, how many of them are internet addicted? There's no research that certainly states that. But when you think of it, Amy, an internet troll, okay? Internet trolls, they spend an awful amount of time online. If they target you, goodness gracious, they'll spend money, time, effort, research. They may actually go and try to, encourage or manipulate other online users to target you. And so essentially, are they internet addiction, or are they just access to personality disorder? Who knows? But what we're starting to see as those that are engaging, whether it be cybercrime, cyber stalking, children, and cyberbullying, we're finding out they're spending an awful lot of time online.
That's crazy. And you had mentioned some factors. Can you go through those so that people can have a little bit of understanding what you mean by that?
Sure. I've got a whole throw one at, and I can, talk about those.
Yeah, I know you have like all the I don't have them all memorized, but you have the different ones
on my list.
Yeah.
I certainly don't like to.
Yeah, the anonymity, accessibility. I know there's the different ones. So why don't you go through some of those?
Okay, so the first, anonymity. Okay, that is a no-brainer, Amy, is that I can go online and I can hide and I can maintain secret whatever I'm doing. Okay. Whatever my deviance, my perversion, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, neutral, if I so decide, I can maintain anonymous for whatever I'm doing online.
Yeah.
Now, if I choose my offline loved one support system, if I do it correctly, they don't have to know. If I'm really engaging in something that would be considered high risk, whether we're talking about true deviance or perverse, I can hide it from all my online contacts. So depending on how dark that is, I can be anonymous and nobody has to know. So that's the anonymity. The internet provides anonymity to the point where whatever I want to search, whatever my penchant is, I can find it online with a little bit of work. Okay. So then we have accessibility. That's another accessibility, everything. Okay. When we talk about cyberspace, the digital universe is the universe. I mean, I hate to say the universe, it's not the universe, but from a metaphorical sense, we're talking about billions, if not trillions, bits of data that are out there. And guess what? They're accessible. They're to me. So whatever I'm looking for with a little bit of work, and if I'm real good at some applications, I can even go into the dark web. Now, we're not talking about that today because it's clear, Amy, that we can find 98%, if not 99% of everything that we want to find. We can find it online and regular internet. Okay. So that is accessibility. All right. Isolation is the ability for us to be able to do it alone. I can isolate and I can hide, whether it be a mobile device. I don't have my mobile device, so I'm showing you my mouse. It can be I can isolate whether I have a desktop, whether it's in my room. For children, as we know, mobile devices, they can isolate to where they can essentially do whatever they want to do without their parents or without my wife, without my brother, without my supervisor knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting with all these factors. It's like it makes it so easy. It's easy for people to do this stuff because of, if you think about it, no one's paying attention to you. It's easily accessible. You can do it alone, and you have a couple other factors, which the inexpensive and you're disconnected. Like it's so easy to do this. If we were all in person in groups, it would be much harder for people to develop these addictions.
Yes, even if you think about just regular chemical addiction, it costs money to
Yeah.
go purchase alcohol, to purchase cocaine. It
Yeah.
costs money to engage in gambling. So yeah, you just mentioned it, and that's one of the factors. It's inexpensive. It doesn't. I mean, I do have to pay my internet, which
Yeah, but
which is part of the optimum package, but it
mhm.
really is incredibly cheap for me to go online, and I can spend hours. I can spend days online.
Mhm.
Okay. And it costs me a little. So yes, that is one of them. And then the two big ones that related
Mhm.
to the factors are fantasy and
Mhm.
disconnection.
Yeah.
Fantasy. Okay. And I think maybe I talked about it a little before. And again, this is
Mhm.
why I'm so strongly into Carl Jung and obviously into Alfred Adler. But with Carl Jung, he spent a lot of emphasis, put a lot of emphasis on the fact that we dissociate. Now, dissociation can occur within psychiatric illness, but for those normal neurotics like you and I, we dissociate all the time. Offline,
Mhm.
we're dissociating when the moment we get up to the moment we go to bed, we're thinking about what we have to do at work. We're thinking about, bills. We're thinking about our loved ones. We're thinking about many other things other than actively tending to what's at hand. All right.
Mhm.
We're constantly fantasizing. We're constantly dissociative. That is part of the human condition. I believe the reason why we do it so much is for self-preservation.
Okay.
So people, when I say fantasy, they think it's sexual fantasy. I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
sexual fantasy is a part of fantasy, but
Yeah.
it's only one small piece of the total pie. We are constantly in a totally different realm. Well,
Yeah.
Amy, when you go online, goodness gracious, you can dissociate, you can detach, and you can fantasize.
Yeah.
And when we take a look into internet addiction, such as with all the research and a lot of the work has been done in, again, in online gaming addiction, gaming disorder, I think it applies more generically, but with gaming, the fantasy, the fact that a person goes into another area of the mind, they can go hours and hours and hours and time just passes. Okay.
Wow.
So when we also look at, and again, with fantasy and disconnection, not to
Mhm.
go into the cyber criminal mind, that's a whole nother show, but
Yeah.
early on, as part of my fascination studying the psychopath, the
Mhm.
sociopath, early on, and I still to this day, I like to learn about and study mass shooters. Okay. When
Oh.
we look at mass shooting victims, what we're finding
Mhm.
out, goodness gracious, they spend an inordinate amount of time online. All right.
Really?
Over and over again. And what we're seeing more and more is that, their manifestos going outline and publishing information about what they plan to do. Going to, used to be 4chan, 8chan. Now the online forum is a 8con, I believe it's what it's called. These online forums where they can go and they can meet other individuals that are going to support and validate whatever their rage, their aggression is. They can go online and they can find it. There is a message board, and there is someone else out there that is just as angry, just as racist, and just as filled with rage
Yeah.
as they are. And once I find that, boy, that takes me into, as I said, the fantasy and the disconnected, to where now not only am I getting validation online, but now I am using aspects of human consciousness that really puts me in a whole different space.
And that's scary too, because as soon as that person finds someone they can bond to, it just bolsters them up even more and they spend even more time online and it just continues to grow and grow.
Correct. And that's a great point, Amy. And that
Yeah.
that goes around to the isolation. So now,
Mhm.
if I find somebody who is validating whatever, my aggression, my hatred for whatever community or
Mhm.
whatever ideology, whatever extreme ideology I have, I find somebody now, when I had said a factor of isolation in the internet addiction dynamic is, yes, I am isolating, but I can now isolate with you because you and I,
Yeah.
Amy, we have that same hatred for that whatever.
Yeah.
And that is how
And
we can isolate ourselves from the rest. And the more I do that, the more I believe that addiction continues to chip away, and it's more and more and more. So now I'm offline and I'm at work, and guess what I'm thinking? I can't wait to get home to talk to Amy so we can talk about that whatever. Or look what else I found out in the paper about, and this is how it all goes. And it's a self-feeding process. And if you think about it, it is just like any other addiction. So it's coming down. Even now, there are two camps when it comes to internet addiction. There are those that don't believe it exists, and there are those that believe it is a real disorder that is something that we're all going to deal with here in the information age. I tend to be in the side of believing that internet use disorder, internet use gaming disorder, internet addiction, however you want to define it, internet addiction, I'm in the camp that believes it exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I can see it too. I know, I can imagine this also can start very young too. I have friends who have younger children, and they're pulling them out of the phones, taking their phones away because the kid is on it so, so often throughout the day. And I can imagine it can start really young, and then they become really dependent on it.
And not only do you throw, that's a great point, Amy. And not only do you throw that in, but now we have to take a look, and the research is yet, it's still preliminary, is the COVID pandemic that we've all gone through for the last couple of years. The COVID pandemic, I'm sure all your viewers, your listeners know, created an incredible amount of both psychological and sociological trauma. Okay. I mean, here living in the New York City, we went from, we got hit very hard from COVID. But what made it worse of the COVID, obviously you have the fear of death, the fear of sick, the fear of losing loved ones, and the actuality that it occurred. But then there was the mandates. Then there was wear a mask, no mask. Then there was quarantine. There was the unpredictability of what's going to happen next in terms of my freedom. Now, we are social creatures. We are social animals. We are packed animals. However you want to look at, we are social creatures. We live to be part of a group. Well, what happened with the pandemic is, what did it do? It cut us off from all of that. So not only did it cut it off from that, but then as we came out of it, and I'm not holding accountable anybody, it's part of the human condition, is it went from mandate, no mandate, mandate, no mandate, isolated. For me, as a psychologist here in the New York City area, I was an essential worker. Okay. So I had to go to work. I would have went anyway. Even if I was offered the choose, as opposed to doing telemedicine. But here it was incredible to see where one week there was people with bated breath wanted to hear what the mayor, what the president, what folks would be saying, about the pandemic, and what about what's next. That in and of itself, I believe, contributed the quarantine, the isolation. I think what we're going to see for those people that were isolated and angry and disenfranchised, what do I think? They spent an inordinate amount of time online. As time away, and to subjugate and to deal and to dissociate from dealing with the reality, the fear of COVID. It'll be interesting to see if in a couple of years from now, if we see there is a considerable increase in what we're seeing as internet use disorder.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And kind of to segue into that, because I know you have different types of addictive internet addictions, like cyber relationship fixated. So I'd really like to go through some of those, because that kind of ties into what we were talking about. Like if you and I were completely reliant on each other, we're going to bond together. I just want to go through some of those different types, because it might, bring up in someone, oh shoot, I know someone who is like that, or I might be like that. And it might help them become more aware.
Okay, sure. Well, so we have 5 different internet addiction types. And again, I have everything nice and written because I'm working with Dr. Novotny. We have cyber sex fixated. Okay, and these are in this. Now, when we talk about a fixation, we're not talking necessarily about an obsession, but it can be an obsessive compulsion. A fixation it's got a bad rap. To be fixated on something usually has part of the neurotic condition about somebody who's fixated on it. They're somewhat compulsive dependent. They're constantly reading, listening, watching about that particular aspect. So first we have cyber sex fixated. All right. And what those are online users that are obsessed with pornography. They're obsessed with any type of adult kind of sites where they can engage, whether it be through masturbatory, their own self-stimulation of watching adult sites, or it can be, adult sites where they can, potentially engage and meet a sexual partner very quickly. So cyber sex fixated, those are online users that are fixated on dealing with those type of sexually provocative, erotic type of sites. We can even throw in, although we're going to talk a little bit about dark side fixated, you also have in the cyber sex fixated is when you move into the realm of S&M, but, and domination, all that kind of stuff. So that is cyber sex fixated. All right.
Wow.
The next we have are cyber relationship fixated. I also have a page on my, on my site, online dating safety tips. Okay. Cyber relationship fixated are those folks, and God bless all of us. As Adler said, we are looking to connect, to be part of, and to be validated. All of us are looking to be with somebody. Now, those of us may be more private than others. Those of us may have a strong need to be in a relationship. So people that are cyber relationship fixated, they are, I hate to say, obsessed with Match.com and all the eHarmonies, all the different relationship sites that they can find. They engage, they create profiles. Not only do they spend all their time on these dating sites, but they also do research on dating, on online dating. And for them, online dating is incredibly important. And what we're learning is online dating, meeting somebody online, except the top three right now of how people fall in love or meet monogamous partners is somebody you meet through a friend, somebody at work, and what's number three now? Somebody that you're introduced and you meet online.
Wow.
So there is relevance to that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But people that are cyber relationship fixated, they go to, remember, when we talked about factors of fantasy and dissociation, Amy, and again, this is no, I almost used profanity. This is no bull crap. Is I have helped people where, again, I have volunteered since 2010 after work and on the weekend, and not to go in specifics, but I have helped people that have actually thought they were in love with somebody that they have never met in person, that they've only exchanged emails through, that they've only seen images, and maybe have only just started to see them via different video web chats, but clearly believe they're in love and have never met them offline.
Wow.
They spend an inordinate amount of time once they meet that person online. Again, cyber relationship fixated. And now the fantasy is that Amy, she is my Lady Guinevere. Boy, she is brilliant. I tell you, that Dr. Novotny, you got to meet her. Have you met her, Dr. Mike? Well, no, I've never really met her, but she's wonderful. Where does she live? I think she lives in the Midwest. People that are cyber relationship fixated really are in this type of fantasy world. And they are, one of the factors, they're detached. Why? Because it affords them the ability to, as Young said, is to dissociate, but they really experience a sense of love.
Okay.
How could you be in love with somebody that you've never met offline, that you've never seen their foibles, their neurotic tendencies, their behaviors, so forth and so on? Not to say that it doesn't happen, but in reality, it is high risk online activities.
Yeah.
And that's cyber relationship fixated.
That's incredible.
Do you want to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know there's definitely more, and especially in the gaming world.
Gaming and online, yes, gaming and online commerce fixated. Now, online commerce fixated, real quickly, Those are your shopaholics. Those are people that go online, and goodness gracious, I'll tell you, I will admit it. I love Amazon. I love Amazon. I also use Walmart while I get some of my stuff, you know, my Cremora and some of my coffee for my patients I've worked. They make a good medium roast. So I order a lot of my stuff from Amazon. I love Amazon. I love that it's quick. I love that it's delivered. I'm a Prime member and I can get stuff in 24 to 48 hours. But thank God I am not online commerce addicted. Somebody who's online commerce addicted, they lose focus of the funds that they have accessible. They will overextend the money that they have. Okay. That is the shopaholic. Now, there's always been shopaholics, but when you're online, what is the beauty of online shopping, of what's called e-commerce? Boop, 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 a couple of clicks, boom. And now, if you want, you can spend extra money, or if you're a Prime member, you get it in the next day or two. It's that easy. All right. That's your online commerce fix. And why? Because of the ease. In that is your online gaming. Now, the reason why I include gaming and online shopping together is because with online shopping as well as gaming, there is the element of competition. Even when we talk about shopping, there is what's called educated consumerism. The educated consumer is somebody who does what? Comparison shops, who is willing to negotiate, who is willing to look and spend the time to find the highest quality product or service for a reasonable amount of money. Okay. But then we have gaming. All right. Now, I said in the beginning, the ICD-11 and the DSM-5-TR, the DSM-5-TR does not have it included yet, but it says for further study, the ICD-11 has, and I'll give you the actual term, I have it written down. It is 6C51 gaming disorder. So I even wrote this. Real quickly, an impaired control over gaming. They just can't stop the onset, the frequency, and doing it. An increasing priority given to gaming to the extent that gaming takes precedence over the life interest and daily activities. So for those that suffer from online gaming use disorder, now all of a sudden they start to, you know what, Amy, I'm going to go into work a little bit later. Okay. So I can stay home and I can do my work. I don't know all the big games right now.
Yeah.
All right? Continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences. So even though my girlfriend, my wife, my loved ones are starting to confront me, even though I got written up at work because I was late due to my gaming, guess what? I continue to do it because it's not causing me to have, oh, I better do something. I better cut the gaming. So that's another one. All right. It's incredible. Number 3, the continuation, is the escalation of gaming despite the negative consequences. Again, as I said, all internet addiction, all addiction is repetitively, all addictions cause negative consequences. And when a person is suffering negative consequences, yet they continue to do it, well, that's when we know it's an addiction. And again, I usually have the Albert Einstein quote about, do you know what Albert Einstein's, if we keep doing, I forget the saying, but it's an incredible saying dealing to, if we keep suffering negative consequences, we're getting this same negative outcomes from doing something over and over again. It is a neurosis. That is what's occurring here with addiction. And then we have the pattern of gaming behaviors results in distress or significant impairment in personal, family, social, education. So now I'm spending so much time gaming or whatever, as I said, my other types of addiction, I'm spending so much time doing it. Now I'm starting to avoid my relationships. I'm starting to avoid task responsibility. I'm now starting to gain weight because I'm sitting here on the computer or on my mobile device and not exercising. So now my blood pressure, my cholesterol, things are starting to go because I'm living a sedentary lifestyle. So those are the aspects that lead to what the ICD-11 says is gaming disorder.
Gosh, that's amazing.
Yes. So real quick,
Yeah.
information implosion fixated. And if we
Mhm.
have to cut, we can certainly just
We're
keep.
good.
I'm trying to go as quickly as I can, Amy.
Yeah.
Information implosion. Okay.
Mhm.
This is also called the dataholics, or the fancy term is infobesity. Now, these are not to go in it. I've done this at times, but I don't want to say compulsive dependent. Well, when I am bored, when I have time to kill, I will Google something. I love food, obviously, as you can tell. I love dogs. I will scroll through things, and I will just scroll to scroll. Now, the
Mhm.
one good thing is, and I've heard about those that are, I don't want to say TikTok dependent or TikTok addicts, but there are a couple of patients that I know. Now, my patients are not internet savvy yet, but the
Mhm.
higher functioning ones, a couple of
Yeah.
them, and a couple of people that work here where I live, they will sit and they will scroll through TikTok
Yeah.
for hours. And they're not even picking a particular category to look at. They're just going through whatever the top TikTok videos are. And I've even asked, and for them, they say an hour, 2 hours can go by like that. So information dataholics are
Mhm.
people that will just an hour, 2 hour, 3 hours will go by and they are scrolling, they're reading through social media posts, they are listening, doing things that have nothing to do, even whatever their penchant is. An example, they may not like cheese, but they will look through different types of cheese, but they're not cheese lovers. Okay.
Yeah.
Dataholics. Okay. The
Okay.
last one, which is the most serious, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
saving it for last, are the dark
Yeah.
side fixated.
Okay.
Now, originally, when I created this, I had thought to myself, and these are people, online users that are fixated with the dark side. They're fixated with violent information.
Mhm.
They're fixated with all the worst content that you can find online
Yeah.
related to mass shootings, related to violence, gore, ideologically extreme concept, racism, all of the different isms and forms of discrimination. And then, not too long ago, I was thinking about mass shooting. I actually did an internet radio show. Related to the relationship between mass shooting and, the internet. And what I
Yeah.
realized that for years is that mass shooters spend an inordinate amount of time online. Why is that? The
Mhm.
factors, because the mass shooter, prior to him actually pulling the trigger, igniting that bomb, setting it everything in motion, he spends a lot of time online. So what I believe is that mass shooters, or those, again, I can't prove whether it's serial homicide, we don't
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
because we don't know of a true serial killer who has been caught, apprehended, has been interviewed
Yeah.
to say, I spent this amount of time online. But I believe, Amy, someday we are going to find that the present day serial killers, your
Mhm.
mass shooters, your rampant, all of those that engage in the most violent acts that we know in society,
Mhm.
we are going to see that there is a connection to what they did online.
Well, and I can understand that because if we didn't have the internet, these people would have a harder time finding support and information to go do these violent acts. But since it's so easily accessible and they can just pour hours and hours into it, their world becomes about that violence. And so it's like it normalizes it for them.
It normalizes it, but what I want to put in the caveat is that
Yeah.
internet, okay, because we're talking about dark
Mhm.
side fixing, the
Yeah.
internet doesn't cause
Right.
the pulling of the trigger. It is
Good point.
contributory. Obviously, the vast majority of online users that engage in violent video
Yeah.
games, the vast majority of them
Mhm.
do not go out and engage in mass shootings. The
Right.
research, countries like Japan, why don't they have mass shooters like the United States does? They engage in mobile device. They have high rates of internet addiction. They engage in video game usage, so forth and so on.
Mhm.
So it's important. Those that are
Yeah.
dark side fixated, the vast majority of them do not become mass shooters, serial killers, so forth and so on. But I have a feeling is the Anders Breiviks, the Norwegian mass killer, mass shooter from 2011, Adam Lanza, we can go on and on and on. Jared Loftner, the Arizona, what we see is they spend a lot of time online. So then what it comes down to, as you said, Amy, was the time that they were spending online, was it all looking for validation? A portion of it, but also another portion, which I believe a significant portion is, falls under what's called confirmation bias. Whatever my extreme ideology is, I go online and you brought it up before, what can I find? I can find information, content, and maybe some other online users that support my craziness. And as Adler believed, once we find others or information to validate whatever craziness we have, it only fuels us to do more. And that's where I believe dark side fixated, those online users that go into our realm, there is a percentage of them, as opposed to the other types of fixates, they are at much higher rates of potentially engaging in offline violent behavior.
It's scary to think about. And you mentioned so many different ways that it shows up, like people starting to neglect their self-care, sort of neglect the relationships, their work, their daily activities. So, and obviously you mentioned that there's negative consequences that show up with an addiction like this. If someone is listening to this and they're going through and they're like, oh shoot, I might have that. I might be a shopaholic. I might have this. What would you say to them? Obviously you have the test questions on your website, but maybe what are some of the top 3 or 5 signs that someone would say, okay, I need to look into this further and I need to really do some assessment. Do I need to get off the internet more and set time aside, kind of like what you described?
Well, I mean, the first thing is and just like we have the defense mechanisms and rationalizations of regular addictions, the vast majority of those that are either listening, watching, or that are going to hear this, I'm not internet addicted. I'm not a shot. Denial. Okay. So the first thing is, and it applies to all addictions, whether it be a chemical addiction, behavioral addiction, is admitting that you have a problem. The first step is, Amy, are you suffering negative consequences for all the time you're spending online? Has your loved ones, has anybody said to you, you're playing World of Warcraft far too much and you're neglecting your wellness obligations, everything that you're doing? What are you doing? What are you planning? So if you're suffering negative consequences, that is the first step. I mean, that I'm trying to simplify it to the point to make it that easy. And that applies to, I mean, goodness, what is the first step of AA, and not to go to 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's recognizing you have a problem. It's recognizing that there's an issue. And how do you recognize if there is a potential internet addiction? What are the negative consequences are you experiencing? Are you putting off family responsibilities? Are you putting off work responsibilities? Have you gained 30 pounds in the last 6 months because you're spending so much time online as opposed to going outside and going for a walk, and on and on and on. But particularly because we are social creatures, negative, if a loved one has said to you, you're spending an awful lot of time, whatever it may be, as it relates to online, that right there is a red flag.
Okay. And obviously there are a lot of questions you have on your website where people can go through and say, yep, no, and really gain some more information and a clear picture of their own lives too, because you have some probing questions. They're really good for people to look at.
Thank you. And again, when I wrote that, and I don't know if in our first conversation, did we bring up nomophobia, which is not my term?
Yes, we did bring that up. Okay, but go ahead and you can mention it again.
Nomophobia. Thank God I don't suffer for that. Nomophobia is anxiety all the way to panic. These are individuals that experience tremendous anxiety because one, they can't connect to Wi-Fi with their mobile device, or two, they can't find their mobile device. It's been misplaced. All right. Now, I have in my volunteer work, I have helped people who have literally had panic attacks because they've misplaced the mobile device. They couldn't find it. Turned out it was in the garage. Turned out it was somewhere they were able to find it. But this is to the state of where we've gotten. Nomophobia, which is a true anxiety attack all the way up to panic attack because they can't find their mobile device. Now, I understand that mobile devices, your iPhone, your Android, whatever, is important because a lot of us have important information. But to experience sheer panic, fear, because you can't find your device, that says a lot of those of us that are walking in the information age.
Yeah. Oh, we have a lot to learn. And I think a lot of it comes from awareness of our own actions, being present, and then deciding if we need to make changes and being consistent on those changes. Just hearing you say you make sure you go out for some exercise, you're not on your mobile device. I mean, I go out for evening walks. That's my time in nature. It's time to decompress, spend some time talking to friends, like physical friends on the walk. It's part of where we need to get back to if we want to make sure we're not addicted.
Amy, as doctor, you're the doctor. Can I ask you, because that is an excellent term and it applies to what we're talking about. Can you speak a little bit, what does that mean to decompress? Because that is an excellent term in terms of asking folks to put it down and to decompress.
Yeah, so for me, it's whatever we're doing during the daytime, it kind of ramps us up. It can get us in a heightened state. Our nervous system can ramp up and we get very involved in that activity. And so if we can take some time where we calm ourselves, put the work away, stop thinking about whatever it is that was challenging our brain, challenging our energy levels, and take some time to, let's talk about something else. Let's calm ourselves. Let's enjoy nature. Let's watch the sunset. It's taking that time to release from the daily activities.
Excellent recommendation.
Yeah. Highly needed, highly valued too. Once you get into that habit, you don't want to miss that part of your life.
Right. And the last thing I want to, in terms of internet addiction, internet use disorder, it's also related to the forms of online aggression of iPredator, but also specific to internet addiction, is that if your loved one is isolating more, if they're spending more time, if they're being hidden about not only what they're doing online or the fact that they're online, that can be another red flag. So that's something to watch out for as it relates to being a parent or a concern about a loved one. Is, are they isolating themselves, going into the garage, for children, going into the bedroom, being secretive about what they're doing online? That could be a red flag related to internet addiction. Got it.
And that's important. So where can people reach out to learn more? What's the best way?
Well, the website is, everything is public domain, educational, free. It is iPredator, either .org, .net, or .co, no M after the CO. Everything at the website. And thank you, Amy, for bringing that up before. I haven't created the entire website. There's a lot of content, but most importantly, it's all free. And even when you print out, share, download any of my cyber tech risk assessments, you don't even have to provide an email to print out anything, because for online safety purpose, the less I know about you, the better. Yeah.
And you really do a good job. I can't tell people enough. I've already shared your website out a lot, and I really recommend people going on there. The information is phenomenal. So thank you for all the years and time you've put together.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's an honor being working with you. Hopefully someday there'll be a third show of us working together. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you all for watching today. Have a great rest of your weekend. Take care and see you next time. Bye.